Welcome to the Broadway.com show, your go-to guide for Tony season and beyond. I'm Imogen Lloyd-Webber.
And I'm Paul Wontorek. This week, we chat with Katharine McPhee and Leslie Odom Jr. on Tony nomination morning, go behind the scenes at a photo shoot with Angels in America's Denise Gough, and more.
And later, set and costume designer David Zinn shows us how he created the imaginative world of SpongeBob SquarePants. But first, let's get started with the news. What's the buzz, Paul?
A lot of shows received multiple nominations this week for the 2018 Tony Awards. Topping the list were two fan-favorite new musicals, the stage adaptation of Tina Fey's Mean Girls and SpongeBob SquarePants. Each received a whopping 12 nominations, including Best Musical. Angels in America, The Band's Visit, and the revival of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Carousel all garnered 11 noms. Two recently opened productions, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and Lincoln Center Theater's My Fair Lady, were also big nominees, each earning 10 nods. Two special Tony winners were also announced this week. Rocker Bruce Springsteen, currently in the midst of a sold-out engagement at the Walter Kerr Theater, and John Leguizamo, whose solo show Latin History for Morons was also honored in the Best Play category. For a complete list of nominees and special winners, visit Broadway.com. And don't forget to watch the 72nd Annual Tony Awards live on CBS on June 10th.
After landing in the record books as the most Tony-nominated play in Broadway history with 11 nods, Angels in America has announced an extension to its run at the Neil Simon Theatre. Tony Kushner's landmark two-part epic is now scheduled to play through July the 15th. It had been originally set to shutter on July the 1st. Marianne Elliott's staging of the show was first seen at the UK's National Theatre in London, and she picked up a Tony nomination for her direction, along with stars Andrew Garfield, Nathan Lane, Susan Brown and Denise Gough, as well as a plethora of additional creatives connected with the revival. Part 1 of the original production, Millennium Approaches, won the Tony for Best Play in 1993. The second, Perestroika, took home the big prize back in 1994.
A story from the life of media mogul Rupert Murdoch is heading to the Broadway stage. James Graham's Inc. is set in 1969 London when young Murdoch bought the struggling newspaper The Sun, aiming to make it a must-read success with the help of rogue editor Larry Lamb. Starring Matilda Tony nominee Bertie Carvel as Murdoch in the West End, the play was nominated for an Olivier Award and will now play Manhattan Theatre Club's Samuel J. Friedman Theatre on Broadway, with an opening set for April 24, 2019. Tony nominee and Olivier winner Rupert Gould will once again direct, with casting to be confirmed at a later date.
It's a shame this play is only in the past, so we can't dreamcast Jerry Hall.
Why Jerry Hall?
Wife number 4.
Oh.
The practically perfect Laura Michelle Kelly, she won an Olivier for Mary Poppins, has signed on to play the role of Julie in the Royal Family of Broadway. The world premiere musical adaptation of The Royal Family is not about the one I usually cover, but is adapted from George S. Kaufman and Edna Ferber's play that's set in the 1920s and loosely based on the legendary Barrymore family. Helmed by John Rando, with choreography by Joshua Bagasse, other stars attached to the project include Harriet Harris, who's currently appearing with Kelly in the Encore's presentation of Me and My Girl, and Will Swenson. William Finn and Rachel Scheinken's show is set to debut at the Berkshire's Barrington Stage Company next month. Road trip, Paul?
Oh, I will drive anywhere to see a new William Finn musical.
And didn't you drive to Barrington Stage last year to see Aaron Tveit in Company?
Imogen, I will also drive anywhere to see Aaron Tveit perform, come what may. Original Spring Awakening star Skylar Astin will rise to the top of the business ladder when he takes on the role of J. Pierpont Finch in the Tony-winning musical How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. The concert staging will play the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C., the latest entry in the theater's Broadway Center Stage series, which also gave us Chess and In the Heights. Mark Bruni of Beautiful will direct, with choreography by Dennis Jones. Joining Astin are recent waitress star Betsy Wolfe as Rosemary and Michael Urie as Bud Frump, a role he first played on Broadway. How to Succeed will play the Eisenhower Theater at the Kennedy Center from June 6th through the 10th.
Carey Mulligan has boarded the off-Broadway transfer of Girls and Boys. Directed by Lindsay Turner, the new solo play by Matilda scribe Dennis Kelly centers on an unexpected meeting at an airport that leads to an intense, passionate relationship. Mulligan appeared in the acclaimed London production of the show at the Royal Court Theatre. This incarnation will begin its New York engagement on June the 12th and officially open on June the 20th at the Minetta Lane Theatre. Can't get to New York? Mulligan's performance will be recorded and released as an audio play.
When we come back, the band's visit scribe Itamar Moses welcomes us to his Brooklyn home. The cast of Puffs gets ready to make magic at the movies, and more. This week on Broadway.com, Regina George herself, Mean Girls Tony nominee Taylor Louderman, hangs with Susan Blackwell on Side by Side. Waitresses Katharine McPhee talks Smash Season 3 on Show People, and more.
Broadway's longest-running musical invites you to celebrate 30 haunting years. The Phantom of the Opera.
Hi, I'm Nathan Lane, and you're watching the Broadway.com show.
Welcome back. Smash Alums Leslie Odom Jr. and Katharine McPhee woke up bright and early on May the 1st to head to the Lincoln Center Library of the Performing Arts and announce the 2018 Tony nominations. We caught up with the Hamilton Tony winner and Waitress leading lady after the big reveal.
For once in your life, you're a part of making somebody else's dream come true. A small part, you just read a name out loud, but I know what that means to people, so it was an honor.
Yeah, it's great to wake up early for a community that I'm so newly a part of, but that I respect so much and that I'm excited to be a part of. And yeah, it's a huge honor to just be a little slice of a big day for a lot of people.
It's wonderful to feel a part of this community. It's also wonderful to feel like you're a part of the legacy of the thing. I remember what it felt like, and it feels great to kind of have a full circle moment.
Odom Jr. and McPhee told us which nominees they were excited to see make the list.
I loved the band's visit so much. I thought their work was so quiet and confident in that show.
I was happy to see Renee Fleming nominated. I mean, what a beautiful voice.
Haley Kilgore is very special, I think, really special talent in Once on This Island.
The pair also shared their advice for this year's nominees.
Enjoy this, enjoy this. It's, there are no guarantees that moments like this come around. If it only happens once and you do it right, once is enough.
The only thing I can compare it to is I loved being on Smash. There was those 2 amazing years of my life, and I really enjoyed it. Just savor it, enjoy it, and make the work the most important thing.
A Tony nomination changes your life. The nomination alone is a very special thing, and you're part of a pantheon. You're part of a lineage. It's really special.
Itamar Moses received a 2018 Tony nomination for writing the book for the acclaimed musical, The Band's Visit. We went to his home in Brooklyn to chat about what it was like to bring the acclaimed film to life on the Great White Way and his collaboration and friendship with composer David Yazbek.
My name is Itamar Moses. I'm a playwright. I live in Park Slope, Brooklyn. I've been, writing plays in New York for 15 years, 16 years, and only now am I working on Broadway. And in a way, I'm kind of glad that it took this long, because I feel sort of acutely aware of how rare it is and how many things that are outside of your control have to sort of fall into place in order for this to happen. Very simply, the story of The Band's Visit is that an Egyptian police orchestra goes to Israel to give a concert, and they're supposed to go to Petah Tikva, one of the larger towns in Israel, but because there's a miscommunication at the bus station, they end up going to this tiny town in the middle of the desert, and the story is just about the little connections and interactions between these Egyptian musicians and these Israeli townspeople over the course of one night. I loved the movie, which was important, because you don't want to end up working on something that you don't like, or that you don't see like the kernel of something in it. But I was also making sure it answered certain number of questions. Could this live on stage? Does a musical seem like the right form for that? Am I the person to do it? So I was and I guess I answered yes to all those questions.
Music is an integral part of The Band's Visit's story. Moses explained how he and Yazbek worked together to capture this in the script.
Music becomes in the show almost another language with which the people communicate, a more fluid, purely emotional, wordless one. Yazbek and I had never met before we worked on this project. Our first conversation ever was a phone call about this show. We've talked since then about how we both went into that conversation saying to ourselves, all right, I know how I think this should be done, and if this guy's not on the same page as me, this is never going to work. And then we're both pleasantly surprised that we had this sort of same take. So much about the source material was counterintuitive for adaptation into a musical. Its spareness, its internality, the amount of silence, the reliance on sort of poetic, like visual information. We both thought that was the thing tonally to try to preserve. It's been a really, really, I think, important lesson that I'm still processing. The contrast between the sort of idiosyncrasy and smallness and strangeness of the thing that we thought we were making, and the size of the sort of embrace that it's received. The show is a great reminder of the wonderful things that can happen if we say yes to something rather than no, or if we welcome people rather than shut them out. In a way, strangers are the clearest mirror in which we can see ourselves. And when we shut out the stranger, we're actually shutting out what we don't want to know about ourselves.
Olivier winner Denise Gough is making a phenomenal Broadway debut as Harper in the Broadway revival of Tony Kushner's Angels in America. Her incredible performance as the hallucinating, anxiety-ridden wife of Joe Pitt earned her a 2018 Tony nomination. Broadway.com sat down with her at a fantastical photo shoot at New York's Time Hotel. Take a look.
It's a big play. I mean, to be honest with you, I did think Angels in America was going to be a walk in the park. I mean, I was like, come on, it's just easy, you know, got loads of time off. You know, at the National, I used to have a bath in one of my breaks, you know, because there was a bath in my dressing room at the National. There's no baths on Broadway. But yeah, then you do Angels in America and you're like, oh God, it's huge. And also Angels in America is quite a lonely play to do because it's an ensemble, but you're not helping each other in your objectives. Like everybody is alone, powering through their devastation. The kind of only link, I guess, for me is with Andrew, with Pryor. But even so, your goal is to be independent at the end of the show, you know, so it's a strange beast, you know.
Gough shared what moves her about this theatrical snapshot of a tragic time.
I'm moved by the homage it pays to the men who died of AIDS. I think that that's considering what happened to those men and that community at that time where they were told it was their fault, to be ashamed of it. I think it's a wonderful homage to them, and so I'm very moved by that. But I'm moved by the hope in it, the fact that the world that he was writing about then, you know, it was pretty grim, but he still wrote hope.
The powerhouse performer revealed how she unwinds after taking the stage in the intense two-parter.
When I'm good, I do like deep breathing and yoga to come down. But you know, I'm on cycle 17 of America's Next Top Model. I've watched all of the Real Housewives. I was thinking about it this morning. I was like, if anybody judges me, all I have to say is it takes every ounce of my intelligence, my mental acuity and my emotional intelligence to do the plays I do. So I refuse to use those things when I am trying to get myself. Yeah, I do as little as possible with all of this. I try and do yoga, and people from Ireland are starting to visit me, which is really nice because then I take them out and do stuff. So we went on a bike ride of Central Park, and that's good for me to know that Central Park is there. But mostly the Real Housewives and America's Next Top Model, which I'm sure you could see in my posing, because I literally just did everything the America's Next Top Model girls do. Learned it all, but now Tyra smizing. Yeah, okay, that's what I do.
The long-running off-Broadway play Puffs, or 7 increasingly eventful years at a certain school of magic and magic, is headed to the big screen. Matt Cox's comedy, inspired by a certain wizard school blockbuster series, was filmed live in its current home at New World Stages and will appear in more than 600 cinemas nationwide on May 9th and 12th, courtesy of Fathom Events. We rolled out the red carpet for a fun photo shoot with the fresh-faced stars.
We are rolling out the red carpet for Puffs. We filmed it live off-Broadway, and today we're taking some photos of us on a sweet red carpet like the starlets that we hope to be one day.
So Puffs is about a certain school of magic and magic, but not about the character that we all know, but all of the characters around it. It's a little bit of the tale of kind of the loser's table of the school and what that whole journey was like for them.
It just started off at this show at this comedy theater that, you know, did really well and then moved up to off-Broadway. So and here we are now with a movie coming out.
Seeing this production on the big screen, I'm just so excited for all the people who've worked so hard on it and so hard to make this happen, to see it fully realized and actually get a chance to, you know, get the word out and actually get people who would never make it to New York to be able to see the show. It's such a special thing.
I love the message that the show brings. You know, it's a play about kindness and friendship and accepting people for who they are. And I think there's a lot of people out there that don't necessarily feel like a lot of stories are targeted towards them, like maybe people who feel like the underdogs or kind of feel like their kind of character is dismissed in stories. And I think our play really highlights that, and I hope it makes everyone feel included.
Not unlike the characters they play on stage, these performers are good friends off stage.
What's really wonderful about Puffs is that we are all, as cast and crew, we're all such good friends. And it's been really, really awesome to get to watch this show that we made together on kind of a shoestring budget among friends grow and first move, to New World stages and now to be a film.
There's a thing that happens, I think, when you take a group of people and you put them in a basement for a year. The amount of in-jokes, and you see everybody at their best and their worst, and everybody is so loving and supportive through holiday seasons and things like that, and we have a mountain of in-jokes at this point that is truly nearing a point where it's its own language. When you're doing shows 6 or 7 or 8 times a week, it's the things that really buoy you and keep you going in a really wonderful way.
I think we're all really excited to reach out to new Wizard fans, around across the country and across the world.
Puffs will magically appear in cinemas nationwide on May 9th and 12th, presented by Fathom Events.
When we return, we find out about David Zinn's Tony-nominated set and costume designs for SpongeBob SquarePants.
Broadway's longest-running musical invites you to celebrate 30 haunting years. The Phantom of the Opera.
The world of Nickelodeon's hit cartoon SpongeBob SquarePants is a zany one, to say the least. Who better to conceptualize Bikini Bottom for Broadway than Tony-winning designer David Zinn? We chatted with Zinn about creating the colorful, innovative sets and costumes for the Tony-nominated musical.
So when Tina Landau, the director, and I started working on this piece together, which was about 5.5 years ago, the very first thing, or kind of first subject of the workshop, was really how do two-dimensional creatures, how does a two-dimensional world, how does a character who's a kitchen sponge, how do you make those come to life in a three-dimensional way? We just started to answer those questions and began to show work in front of people to see kind of how they accepted SpongeBob or the world of the thing, how far away we could move and still feel like that they were seeing the world and the people that they recognized, the characters that they recognized. And what we learned was you could move really far away from it. In fact, Ethan embodied SpongeBob so much, he could just be in a t-shirt. It's fine. You don't need to do much. And it's true, we didn't need to do much with them. So that was such a freedom and such a kind of blessing in a way, because it really allowed us to just let the people that we brought into this world shine. And then found a way to build the world of Bikini Bottom. It's that crazy thing in theater where you point at a chair and you say, that's a rock. And everybody's just like, okay, that's a rock. We really exploited that and used that in a way that was also very freeing, which is like, we can just point at a bunch of pool noodles and say, that's kelp. And people are like, that's kelp, that's great. And enjoy the fun of the leaps of logic that we're asking them to take. There's a very famous episode of SpongeBob, of the series, where SpongeBob and Patrick order a television. It comes to them in a cardboard box, and they take the television out, and then they play all day inside the box, because that's like the most fun. And that is absolutely, that spirit is the way that we've tried to come to the material, not only by literally, there's cardboard boxes all over and they have to climb all these mountains of cardboard boxes, but just like, here's a thing, here's a ladder, here's a pool noodle, here's a cooler, here's a surfboard, here's a water bottle, here's a Nerf ball, here's a old boom box. Just turn them into something wonderful. The color was important. Obviously the blue was sort of a no-brainer for the underwater world. As a place to begin, and we definitely wanted you to feel like you walked into a festival of blue and underwateriness. SpongeBob in the musical faces an obstacle. He has to climb Mount Humongous, which is a soon-to-explode volcano. How do you represent something like that? In a world of blue, you do some basic color theory and go to the opposite color. And of course, orange not only means danger, but also is the opposite color of blue. So it felt like it was an appropriate place to put a bunch of orange and make something that was equally strong and a world that we kind of hadn't seen before until we actually get to the mountain. The volcano, the Mount Humongustine, is backed by an enormous dimensional stack of orange cardboard boxes, of which this is a rough model piece of. And then the things that they have to climb are these sort of wonderful, like, factory carts of cardboard boxes that contain a bunch of different obstacles for SpongeBob and Sandy to climb. They also have to climb, we made these kind of crazy ladder sculptures that are ladders, obviously climbing a mountain, ladder seemed like a good, a way to indicate that you have to climb things. Ultimately, SpongeBob has to scale a large ladder wall, but he also has to kind of climb these crazy rolling ladder sculptures at some point. We also blow, with big orange fans, we blow a bunch of orange confetti at him and Sandy as they try to make their journey.
Zinn illustrates the challenges of making the characters come to life by taking a closer look at some of the costumes.
Sandy's a good case in point in terms of like costuming character in a way that different from what she looks like in the series. Sandy on the series has ears and a tail. We tried ears and we tried a tail. A found them to be cumbersome because also she's a sort of great karate master and we really wanted the actor playing her to have the freedom she needed to do all those moves. But also there was a point at which it felt a little like children's theater in an illustrative way, in a way that we were trying to move away from, to like have the squirrel. We'd taken these other kind of leaps with the characters and felt like we can do this without the tail. So we sort of captured the sense of her helmet with her hairdo. She has a big, wonderful afro with her trademark flower in it. When she's outside of her bubble, she wears a spacesuit and a space helmet, or a pressurized helmet so she can breathe. So we turned that into kind of an awesome jumpsuit that we wanted just to be sort of cute and wearable, but also strong and tough and a sort of awesome, like, badass girl thing to wear. Ethan's just like, in a way, it's like the simplest costume, Ethan, he never stops moving. He dances, he breakdances, he does the splits, he climbs a wall, he goes upside down, he does just this in constant motion. And so we really needed something that served him practically, and that meant that we just couldn't have things that got in the way. We tried him in shorts, we tried him in, he'd been in any number of things. He was in a yellow wig at some point, but ultimately we just found like all of that stuff got in the way of Ethan and his sort of wonderful humanness. And so we sort of pulled all that stuff away. We nod to the character. We could capture a few elements of the cartoon so that they were recognizable, but could leave we really could even leave like the shapes and stuff of them behind. Like we just had to kind of hold on to a few things to key people into who was who, and I think otherwise we really found a kind of new human world for them.
As audiences enter the human world of SpongeBob, Zinn hopes they feel the fun and joy of the new musical.
I think when you leave the theater, I want you to feel like you've had a fantastic time, that you've been to a really great party with a bunch of crazy people that you never knew before. And I hope that you also are touched by the message of friendship. There's something so contagious about the way that SpongeBob deals with the world, and I think it's hard not to have some of that rub off on you, and that seems great.
When we come back, Aaron Tveit gives us a sneak peek at Moulin Rouge.
Broadway's longest-running musical invites you to celebrate 30 haunting years. The Phantom of the Opera.
Hi, I'm David Morris, and you're watching the Broadway.com show.
Thank you for watching the Broadway.com show.
We leave you with Aaron Tveit giving us a glimpse of Moulin Rouge with a sweeping number, Come What May.
See you next week.
Come what